Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here in the Overflow Room with some important updates to recent videos. As you know, periodically I like to do this to check in with additions to the discography or to update some things that I might have missed or take into account your suggestions for titles that I should have mentioned but didn't. And we have, let's see here, a pile of stuff to go through by Wagner, Rimsky-Korsakov, Sibelius, Dvořák, and Schumann. 5 fun-filled composers. And are you ready? First, as an update to my talk on Wagner's Ring, I had mentioned the 2 Furtwängler rings, the 1950 La Scala and the later, 52 or 51 or 53, whatever the heck it was, the one from the Italian radio. That was on EMI. Everybody seems to agree that the better version is La Scala. The question is, where do you find a decent sounding, well, none of them sound decent, but a reasonable sounding performance? And the one I recommended was this one. I just wanted to show it to you. This is what it looks like. It's very, very basic. It's on the Gebhardt label, Gebhardt, Gebhardt. And it claims that it's based on new remastering from the original tapes with state-of-the-art 24-bit technology. I don't know what the original tapes are. I don't know what they did to remaster it. But of all of them, this is probably the best-sounding one that I've heard. Some of you may have some others. There may be something that came out even since. There may be more to come in the future. But for now, if you have this version, let me just say, you have one of the better sounding Furtwängler La Scala rings, if you can tolerate the sound at all. This is the one to get, I think, the one on Gebhardt. Also, I mentioned, let me just move this around here. There we go. The Clemens Krauss ring, another one that has suffered from the quality of the source material, and it's been issued at crazy prices, up and down the scale, from next to nothing to really full price for what people claim are remasterings. And this is the first authorized release from the original tapes, it claims, on Orfeo. If you can still find it, it's always a big if with these things. God knows how long they stay around. But this, of course, is one of the all-time great recordings of the Ring. It features Hans Hodder, Astrid Varnay, Wolfgang Wingassen, Gustav Neidlinger, Regina Resnick, Ramon Vinet, Joseph Greindl, Paul Quinn, just Hermann Ude, all these people with big long names that I don't pronounce well. Anyway, it is, and Clemens Krauss, who's a fantastic conductor. This is one of the great Bayreuth rings. And if you're looking for this one, then you should have it. This was recorded live in 1953. And this is certainly one of the better sounding versions of this particular ring, if you want the Clemens Krauss ring. So much for Bayreuth rings. You know, I have spent so many years of my life listening to these Bayreuth rings. And I have to say, and while you go for the singers, basically, you want to hear Hodder, you want to hear, you've got to have, Wagner with Astrid Varnay, who was great in her day. But I keep coming back to Schulte, Karajan, and Böhm, studio recordings or really good sounding live Bayreuth recordings in the case of Böhm. And, they're as good as any, and you've got great casts, and they sing the daylights out of the music, and there are just some things that I can listen to 400 different versions of, say, a Sibelius symphony, but 400 different versions of the Ring, all recorded with the same people. I could understand if it was a totally different cast, completely different cast, all in good sound. Yes, then go ahead and compare them. But to get basically the same people doing the same thing year after year, I don't know. I think it's kind of, there are better things to do. But I'm not a big Wagnerian, so if you are, those are the ones to get. Of course, if you are, you don't need me to tell you which ones to get because you already know. Next, an update to my chat about Rimsky-Korsakov opera suites. This is not an opera suite. I mentioned that actually, if you include the opera suite, you basically double the amount of orchestral music by Rimsky-Korsakov that's available, and it's top quality Rimsky-Korsakov. But there are a couple other pieces I wanted to tell you about. that I think belong in the same category, the same general class. So this is aside from the symphonies and some of the Sinfonietta on Russian themes and some of the other things that he did, the overture on Russian themes. Anything you can do with a Russian theme, I can do better. Ha ha! No, seriously. Nah, not seriously. There is a work by Rimsky-Korsakov that's really very little known, that ought to be very well known. And it's called simply Skazka, which is Russian for tale or story. And the problem with Skazka, it's a symphonic poem. It's a big work, 17, 18, 19 minutes long. It's vintage Rimsky-Korsakov, glorious. It has not been all that frequently recorded, and I don't know why. When people look for Rimsky-Korsakov, if you don't want another Capriccio Espagnol or Russian Easter Overture, do Skazka. This is not to be confused with Sadko, which is the symphonic poem that Rimsky-Korsakov later mined for the opera of the same name. Skazka and Sadko are different. That may be one of the reasons people tend to get them mixed up. The other reason is because the English translation is never the same twice. Sometimes it's called legend. Sometimes it's called fairy tale. It really ought to just be called story. That's what a skazka is, or a tale. That's all it is. And it is fabulous. It was, just to be clear, so we all know, it's his Opus 29. So no matter what it's called, you may see something called legend or fairy tale. Look for Opus 29, and you're getting the right thing. I have 4 recordings of it. There's a very good one on Chandos in fully modern digital sound. You may want to look for that one. I have 3 sitting here in the overflow room. The Chandos one is back in Brooklyn. And I just want to tell you what they are, because you should be aware, and you should just get one. Whatever you need to do, no matter what else you duplicate. It's a major work. A major work in that orchestral fairy tale style that Rimsky-Korsakov did better than just about anybody else. This one is with the Moscow Symphony Orchestra under Igor Golovchin. This is the Naxos recording. There is, if you can still find it, the Loris Czech-Navorian one on ASV. This was coupled with Scheherazade and also with Sadko. So you get both Skazka and Sadko, and the Song of India from Sadko. And this is with the Armenian Philharmonic. These are kind of rough and ready and raw performances, but they're lots of fun. They really are. They're a great deal of fun. And also, excuse me, my voice is shot. Also, there was Svetlanov, who, of course, did it as issued on 4 billion different incarnations of Melodia and licensees of Melodia and in boxes, and it's all over the place. So just so you know, Svetlanov did it too. And Skazka is something you've got to hear. It's a great work. It's just a great work. Totally ignored and neglected, and it's just unaccountably. Truly, truly unaccountably. So I wanted to add that to the talk on the Rimsky-Korsakov opera suites, and maybe sometime I'll do a talk on Skazka and take you through it, step by step. But until then, nothing should prevent you from listening to it. So that's worth having. Also, an interesting performance I just thought I'd mention. This is Sibelius Fifth. This is Paavo Berglund's last recording of it with the Chamber Orchestra of Europe. Now, these performances are very, how should we say, ethereal, perhaps is the word. Berglund wanted to do his last Sibelius cycle in order, as he said, to realize every single possible audible detail in the scores. And that includes mostly in the string parts. Because quite often with Sibelius, you get these passages of string stuff. They're either tremolos or they're some sort of scratchy passage work stuff. And you have one of those in the transition between the sort of scherzo part of the first movement and its coda. And the strings are going with a slow accelerando. There's actually music in all of that scratching and scraping. There truly is, especially in the lower strings. The cellos is going ta-ta-ta-ta, and they're going ya-pam-pam. There's some sort of or counterpoint, primeval counterpoint happening there. And the performance that brings it out best is this one. with Pavel Berglund and the Chamber Orchestra of Europe. It is the performance to listen to if you really want to know what's going on in those string parts. He takes so much care to get those right and make all of the little details audible. So it's very, very interesting, and I just thought I'd mention it to you for you Sibelius Fifth aficionados, for those of you who are looking for things that you haven't heard before. Pay close attention to the string parts and give this one a shot. It may surprise you. It really may. And let's see, what else have we got? My talk on Dvořák's Violin Concerto. There were all kinds of extra ones you mentioned. Some of you mentioned the last Milstein, which some of you said was coupled with the Glazunov Concerto. Actually, it was coupled with the Goldmark Concerto, if I recall correctly. I don't know, it began with a G. And I said he did two of them. I was thinking of the two sort of 50s ones, the mono and then the stereo, but there was a third. And, you guys are right, as always. So I probably should have mentioned that one too, since I own it, but that's another issue. The one I wanted to bring up, because I really think it deserves a shout out, was this one, Stern and Ormandy. Because first of all, it's coupled with a super cello concerto with Leonard Rose and Ormandy. And second of all, because it's just a beautifully balanced, excellent performance, and Isaac Stern never gets any cred, and it's not fair. He was a great violinist. He recorded a huge amount of repertoire. He was very forward-looking. He was a wonderful chamber music soloist. He commissioned all kinds of works. He really, really, really deserves some attention. It wasn't his fault that he happened to be around when, Milstein and Heifetz and, some of these other hotshot violinists and the Russians, Oistrakh and Kogan, they were all out there too. But Stern was a first-rate violinist, and he recorded this first-rate version of the Dvorak Violin Concerto, which I really think you should be aware of. So I wanted to mention that to you. And finally, as an adjunct to my talk on the Schumann Piano Concerto. Now, this, of course, I knew when I made my picks, and I did that talk, that I was going to get deluged with all of the performances that I didn't include. Because as I said, and as we all agreed, it's a piece that just about all the major pianists have done, and done well. And it was complicated, as I said at the time, by the fact that, most of the major pianists did it more than once, and did it well. Although you'll have preferences. I mean, you've got the 3 or 4 by Argerich, and the 3 by Aral. You mentioned Aral's Icon recording, the one on EMI, the earlier one. Between that and his Dochnani one with the Concertgebouw and the Davis with the Boston Symphony, you could just swim in Schumann concertos by the same people. But I did want to mention one that a bunch of you brought up, which I really think does belong in any short list of top great performances, and that's Clara Haskell. I mean, everything she did was kind of special. She was a truly, truly masterful and unique and original artist, a woman whose personal life was a catastrophe. I mean, she just couldn't get anything right. She had accident after accident, and stuff happened to her, but she lived for music. I think that's the only thing you can say about her. She just lived for the music. And when she was in front of the keyboard, everything somehow transmogrified. I remember there's a wonderful description, I think it's in this booklet actually, from Tatiana Vishnevskaya, I'm thinking, no, Tatiana Nikolaeva, who was the inspiration behind Shostakovich's 24 Preludes and Fugues. And she had gone to Vienna when she was a student to see Clara Haskell, because everyone was saying, yeah, you got to see Clara Haskell. And she says she was sitting there in the audience, and this old lady was like bent over with her hair like a rat's nest. She came out looking like hell, and she sat down in front of the keyboard, and magic happened. And that was Clara Haskell. So it really was. Whatever she said, you can sort of see here. She doesn't look like the happiest camper on the block, does she? But when she was in front of the keyboard, magic happened, and we have the Schumann Piano Concerto with Willem van Otterloo and the Hague Philharmonic, and it is an absolutely splendidly marvelous, gorgeously great recording of the Schumann Concerto. Haskell was a marvel. She really was. So I do want to talk about her. And if you can find hers, you should have the big box, the Haskell box, if you don't have it. And if you don't want to get it, you can just find the Schumann, download it, do whatever you want to do. But do hear her Schumann concerto. It's absolutely fabulous, as well as about 175 other ones that I could have mentioned and that many of you mentioned. It is a piece that it's the gift that keeps on giving. So those are the updates. I hope that these have filled in some of the blanks and given you additional inspiration to keep on listening. Thanks for joining me, friends. Take care.